public may view and listen to the meeting tonight on Wave Channel 18 and online through the city's YouTube channel. If you would like to participate in live public comment via the Zoom platform, please refer to the agenda for instructions. Pastor Ryan Schindler from First Street Community Church will be doing the invocation this evening, and Mayor Joyner will begin the meeting immediately after. Pastor, if you'd like to.
I'd like to invite everybody to pray with me as we open. Our good and loving Heavenly Father, we thank you that we could be here tonight at this meeting. We thank you for the city of Lincoln and all those who serve, for the mayor, city council, as well as many employees that serve the city. Lord, just pray for all the business that's conducted tonight, that you give us all a spirit of cooperation and a common vision toward achieving our goals. And we just pray your blessing upon each person here, pray your blessing upon the city, and just pray that we would know how to govern it wisely and lead it. Lord, we thank you for watching over us. Thank you for loving us. We pray all this in the name of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
All right. We'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. When roll call, please.
Yes, Councilmember Andriotta,
Here.
Councilmember Brown,
Here.
Councilmember Carl Skint,
Here.
Councilmember Lauritsen,
Here.
and Mayor Joyner.
Here. We move on to report from closed session.
Thank you,
Christine?
Mayor. There is no reportable action.
Agenda modifications. Sean, I think they wanted to pull one item for a future date. Pledge of Allegiance. We'll do that one. If you'll all please stand and join me. To the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Kind of important. Now we'll move on to agenda modifications. And Sean, I think that you requested that we pull item 8B for a future date.
Yes, please.
Any other requests for agenda modifications from the council? Yeah. All right. Move on to presentations, starting with item 6A, a proclamation 2023-06, recognizing the First Street Community Church 75th anniversary. I will go ahead and read this. A proclamation of the City Council of the City of Lincoln celebrating the 75th anniversary of the First Street Community Church in Lincoln. Whereas in 1948, 3 years after World War II, when the two biggest stars on TV were Milton Berle and Ed Sullivan, and the San Francisco newspaper headlines, "Tel Aviv is bombed and US recognizes Jewish state," while Lincoln News Messenger reported on a cow stepping on a highway bridge south of Lincoln that wrecked two cars and killed the cow. And whereas, what caught my attention reading this just now was not the cow. It was the fact that when this proclamation was drafted, the events in Israel had not yet happened. And so here we are, all these years later, facing the same challenges. Whereas there were a few churches in Lincoln, but no Baptist church, and the Temple Baptist Church hoped to start a Baptist mission in Lincoln, sending Opal and Eldon, is it Duthit? Duthit? Which is it? How do you pronounce the last name? Do it. We all got it wrong. Do it. To knock on the doors. And whereas on the Do-It's second visit to Lincoln, they met Alice Hayward and her daughter, Elsie, who lived at 654 H Street, and from the humble beginning of a congregation of about 30, becoming the first Baptist church. And whereas the first services were held at the Women's Club by Pastor Opal Do-It, and baptisms were conducted the old-fashioned way in the Auburn Ravine. Mhm. And whereas several years go by and a property was purchased at Fifth and L Streets for the new church in subsequent years, included many church revivals and winning third place in the May 1959 Centennial Parade with the float theme, Faith of Our Fathers Still Living Still. And whereas after some growing pains, a new property was purchased at the corner of First and O Streets, and a groundbreaking of the $60,000 building occurred on June 12th, 1966. The new church would have a capacity of 250 and include a Sunday school and auditorium. And whereas dedication of the new church was a year later, and 10 years later, a parking lot was completed. And I remember that parking lot being completed. Whereas in April of 1998, the church celebrated 50 years and a renovation project was started in August of 2008 with a rededication of sanctuary done November 13th, 2008. Now therefore be it proclaimed that the City Council of the City of Lincoln does hereby celebrate the 75th anniversary of First Street Community Church and honors the church for its unwavering commitment to promoting faith and fellowship in the City of Lincoln. Passed and adopted on this 10th day of October, 2023, hopefully by unanimous vote. Can I get a motion on this, please?
I make a motion.
Second. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Who would like to speak? Thank you and congratulations. All right, item 6B, adopt proclamation 2023-07, recognizing October 7 through 15, 2023 as Water and Wastewater Professional Appreciation Week. Matt.
Hello, good evening, council, members of the public. I'll read the proclamation 2023-2007. A proclamation of the City Council of the City of Lincoln declaring the week of October 7th through 15th, 2023 as the Water and Wastewater Professionals Appreciation Week. Whereas water is the lifeblood of California, and without safe and reliable water, no community and no sector of the economy from high-tech to manufacturing to agricultural can thrive or expand. And whereas now more than ever, the water industry is proud of the important role our essential workers play in making sure our communities have safe and reliable drinking water. And whereas thanks to technological advances by highly skilled and trained water professionals and the dedication of thousands of industry professionals in the state, California drinking water and treated wastewater meets some of the most stringent water quality standards in the nation. And whereas on where you live in California, your water may come from a nearby well or river, or it may travel hundreds of miles through canals or pipelines to reach your tap. Regardless of where it originates, your drinking water is filtered, cleaned, tested, and distributed in a process carefully managed by trained water professionals. And whereas California is steadily expanding the reuse of treated wastewater and pioneering the use of advanced purified recycled water to replenish aquifers, prevent seawater intrusion, and improve local water supply reliability. And whereas water professionals at local public water and wastewater agencies work 24/7 to plan for the future, maintain and upgrade their systems, and improve the safety and resiliency of local water supplies for their communities. And whereas to the Public Policy Institute of California, according to the Public Policy Institute of California, local public water and wastewater agencies invest more than 25 billion a year on local water-related programs and projects that public health and the environment, that protect public health and the environment, improve local water supply reliability, replenish and clean up groundwater basins, provide water for fire protection, and protect against floods. And whereas thousands of essential water and wastewater and recycled water industry professionals in the state dedicate their careers to keeping drinking water, recycled water, and treated wastewater safe and reliable for use by Californians. Now, therefore, it be it proclaimed that the City Council of Lincoln do hereby declares October 7th through 15th, 2023, Water and Wastewater Professionals Appreciation Week, and extends its sincere gratitude and appreciation to the water and wastewater professionals who work 24/7 to provide excellent essential services to our community every day. Should I read the next part? Passed and adopted this 10th day of October, 2023 by a forthcoming, hopefully unanimous vote.
We wouldn't dare not.
I move.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? All right. Congratulations.
So we do have several people that we want to recognize tonight. And the first, I'd like to give an opportunity to our three management representatives, Aaron Hookins, who today received notice that he passed his grade 4 certification, the highest level, the management level certification for wastewater. Chris Nelson, he's our new water manager. He's joined the team about a month ago. And then Angela Frost, who's been here for quite a while, holding it down when I think we didn't have a director for a while. So she's very experienced and knowledgeable. But I'd like to let them say a few words and then introduce their staff who's here with us tonight.
You can see who's here.
We will get a, yeah.
All right, well, I'm excited to kick things off. Again, good evening, Mayor and Council. Angela Frost, Environmental Services Manager, and I have the honor to introduce the Streets team and acknowledge and recognize them. So many of you may not know, we have an incredible streets division, and one of the things that they handle are the major water leak repairs in the city, and that is no easy task. So when the water goes out, you want that water turned back on. So the sooner that we can get the guys out there, the faster that we can get our water back into service. We have a crew of 10 in the streets division. Most are certified as water technicians, and the others are getting those certifications ready to go. We have taken great measures to replace our old water mains in town and get things repaired. So just to give you an example, in 2015, we had 72 water leaks that we fixed that year. In 2023 today, we've had 14. So that's a huge improvement, and all credit to the city and to these hard workers. So next, I would like to recognize the entire streets team for their service to water quality and conservation. And I'm grateful for the few that are here tonight to represent the streets department. So with that, I'll call out Simon Hieronymus. Thank you. Sorry about that. He has been with the city almost 2 years. And then Nate Labrado, he's also been with the city almost 2 years. Mike Voorhees, he's been with the city 4 years. And Kevin Craw, who's been with the city 23 years. Congratulations, guys.
Good evening, City Council and Mayor. My name is Aaron Hookins, and I'm the Utilities Maintenance Supervisor for the Wastewater Department. I'd like to say a few words to recognize our wastewater staff and the excellent service they give the residents and business owners of the city of Lincoln. Here are a few facts about the wastewater department. We have 7 full-time employees, including myself, maintaining and running our system 24/7, 365 days a year. Our staff is responsible for 10 sewer lift stations that require around-the-clock supervision. We currently have 222 miles of gravity sewer main, 3.5 miles of forced mains, and roughly 22,000 commercial and residential laterals and cleanouts that we're responsible to maintain. And then as we all know, those are growing every day. The wastewater field is also getting more and more state guidelines and regulations every year to help protect our environment and keep the residents of California in good health. I would like to quickly introduce our staff. We have Tom Andrews. Tom Andrews has been with the city for 17 years and in the field for 25. Brian Button, who couldn't make it tonight, has been with the city for 19 years. Travis Espinoza, he's been with the city for 10 years. Matt Probst has been with the city for 9 years. Matt Reynolds has been with the city for 20 years, and he's been in the field for 25. And Danny Thatcher, he's also been in the field for 10 years. We definitely wouldn't be as successful as we are without these 6 gentlemen working tirelessly every day to help keep our residents and business owners and visitors safe and in good health. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Chris Nelson, the newest environmental services manager here. Really appreciate the recognition tonight, and with that, I'd like to make sure that we're recognizing the water department. We have, including myself, 8 full-time employees overseeing the treatment, the delivery, storage of our water supplies here. Thinking about it further, there's a lot of people out there that just turn on the faucets and kind of just expect the flow, don't really think much about it. Hey, that's magic. Look at that. Well, these are all the folks that make sure that happen for us. So I really do appreciate the recognition on behalf of our staff here at Lincoln. With that, I would like to recognize a couple of us here from our department. So Sam Ford. Sam has been with Lincoln for 18 years, and Mike DeCou for 10 years now. And just a little something interesting and special about both of them. Sam was promoted this year to supervisor of water department, and Mike was recently promoted to our senior tech. So congratulations, and thank you all for the warm welcome and the appreciation.
Why don't we come to you? How's that work? Okay, you guys, however you want to do it. Yeah.
That's true in the whole. All right.
Working the whole crew. Okay, what are we doing?
Go on that side, Paul. Yeah, you guys go on that side.
Go down here.
No, don't do that.
No, all right. Down to the side. Got everybody? Go for the wide angle lens.
You.
Nice, Brian. Sorry. Well, it was kind of mentioned in those comments. Water and wastewater are 2 of what we refer to as invisible services. You don't notice them until they're not there. And these are the guys that make that happen. Not just make the water come into your house, but make the toilet flush and everything else go out of the house. So again, we are immeasurably appreciative of the very hard work you all do. So, all right, we will move on now to item 6C, a proclamation 2023-08, recognizing October 9th through the 13th, 2023 as Code Enforcement Officer Appreciation Week. Christine?
Thank you, Mayor. We don't have quite the staff to be able to support this proclamation, but they do in Public Works. So whereas the California State Legislature passed Assembly Concurrent Resolution number 283, designating the second week of October as Code Enforcement Officer Appreciation Week. And whereas code enforcement officers provide for the safety, health, and welfare of residents in communities throughout the state of California through the enforcement of local, state, and federal laws and ordinances dealing with the various issues of building, zoning, housing, animal control, environmental, health, and life safety. And whereas code enforcement officers have challenging and demanding roles and often do not receive the recognition for the job they do in improving the quality of life for residents and businesses within local communities. Whereas the role of many code enforcement officers has expanded in recent years, with jurisdictions increasingly relying upon the expertise and training of code enforcement officers in their communities. And whereas code enforcement officers are dedicated, highly qualified, highly trained professionals who share the goals of preventing neighborhood deterioration, enhancing communities, and ensuring safety and preserving property values through knowledge, training, and the application of housing, zoning, and nuisance laws. And whereas code enforcement officers often have highly visible roles in the communities they serve and regularly interact with the public and a variety of federal, state, county, and local officials in their capacity as code enforcement officers. And whereas code enforcement officers are certified by the California Association of Code Enforcement Officers, where they are trained in all aspects of enforcement, but also in de-escalation, accommodation, and the ability to gain compliance with community standards and regulations. And whereas code enforcement has been at the forefront of creating innovative and creative solutions that are specific to the needs of our community here in Lincoln. And more specifically, code enforcement has been an integral part of the city's efforts to respond to the issues surrounding our unhoused population, and have worked hand in glove with the Volunteer Adopt a Creek program, the Lincoln Police Department, Public Works Department, Placer County Probation Department, and Health and Human Services. Now therefore be it proclaimed, hopefully, that the City Council of Lincoln does hereby recognize the week of October 9 through 13, 2023 as Code Enforcement Officer Appreciation Week in the City of Lincoln, and call upon its residents to join in recognizing and expressing their appreciation for the dedication and service of the individuals who serve as our city's code enforcement officers.
I move.
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained? Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. And so as your Chief Code Enforcement Officer, as your city attorney, I would like to introduce my one remaining code enforcement officer
Yeah.
and the traitor in the room. So this is Kimberly McHugh, who is our code enforcement officer. She's been with the city now for a little over a year and successfully completed her KCO certification recently and promoted to code enforcement officer 2. She's done an amazing job. And then Tim Jekyll, who just recently left us, but has transferred over to the Lincoln Police Department and is going through his training to rejoin that force. So we will have an amazing advocate for code enforcement in the police department. And I look forward to building even stronger relationships with that department and improving the quality of life for our community.
That's wonderful. Both of you.
And then we want to get a picture.
Kim, if you want to say
you wanna
something
say
before we
something,
get
Kim?
started, go ahead. You're right there by the microphone. No? Yeah, that's good. All right, let's get in here.
Team Timber, right?
Run this way.
You.
Congratulations.
Mayor, may I make a comment about our code enforcement team? I just want it to be known, for those who don't already know, that the two of these code enforcement officers have really brought an element of excellence to Team Lincoln. And not only do they just go out and, write people up or tell people to clean up their mess or whatever it might be, they actually go above and beyond to try to help people and try to service people and to make their lives better in the process. And I have really, really appreciated their heart for the people in our town and how they have done their job. And I'm very grateful for the two of them.
As are we all.
And for anyone listening that hasn't or doesn't know about how Kim really put her heart out there for a resident over on First Street to really help them out when she found out how dire their situation was. They really do care.
So while I have an opportunity at the mic, for those of you that are listening in the audience or at home, we just recently launched our recruitment to fill our second position on Monday. So if you're interested in joining this phenomenal code enforcement team, there is an opportunity on calops.org. That'd be CALOPPS.org.
The number will appear at the bottom of your screen. Right? All right. With that, we go ahead and we move on to public comment. This is an opportunity for any members of the public wishing to speak on an item not on our agenda, but also within the subject matter jurisdiction of this council to do so. So with that, I've got a couple of cards here. We'll start with Doug Rockwell. Doug? They left. All right, well, that had to do with dumping trash in the alleys, so.
That would be code enforcement.
That would be code
issue,
enforcement.
So that individual is more than happy to contact Kimberly. We'll work on that.
You know what? We've got a phone number for him here. We can take it in reverse and have Kim reach out. Paul Voss. Close.
Hey, Paul Vose, City Lincoln resident. You've heard from the water professionals. Now you're going to hear from the water unprofessionals. They're certified, I'm certifiable. There's a difference. But I just wanted to thank the city for all of the support that they gave to us during the cleanup. 2 Saturdays ago, we collected about 4,000 pounds of garbage. And 2 of those people that were instrumental were Tim and Kim. I've seen them in action when you talk about the heart that they have dealing with the homeless people, not just going by the law, but going by their heart too, when dealing with them. They're tremendous. All the people behind the scenes, Scott Boynton, I'm sure Christine, you were involved. I know Sean, you were involved. There's a bunch of other people I'm probably forgetting, like Matt from Public Works, like that. The implements of construction that we got from the Tool Bank, from California Coastal Commission, Home Depot and Lowe's were helpful. Food and water from Sourdough, Safeway, Walmart. Other alliances with the Sierra Nevada Alliance and the World Wildlife Heritage Fund, and a crew of people from the Lincoln Crossing Nature Preserve who were always interested in the Auburn Ravine area, and 160 other people that showed up to collect these 2 tons of waste. And I just wanted to thank you and all of them.
Thank you, Paul. We say it a lot, but what makes a community special is its people. And that is a perfect example. 160 some volunteers stepping out to help this community, giving up their own time and energies to do so. And that's the type of thing you don't see in every community, but does absolutely stand out in Lincoln. So I appreciate that. Anyone else in the room wishing to speak on an item not on the agenda tonight? Mr. Chapman?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, council members, city staff, and those here as well as at home. I want to read something first, and then I'm looking for some information. It may not come out that way. shut out the rest of the world and relive something special, that moment in your life. A moment when time slowed, when magic seemed real, when you were thinking, this must be a dream. Dream it again. Recall it over and over and over. Don't worry, happy memories never fade away. The reason I wanted to share that with you, not only is the things that I read every single day, but I too cannot help but noticed a small change on our agenda this evening. And that particular item is from last council meeting, under the item number 7, last item, public comment on non-agenda items. In this meeting, it came up with public comment on non-agenda items within the subject matter jurisdiction of the council. I'm wondering, why is that? I live in the world that if it's not broken, don't fix it. So my question is, what is this fixing? What is this? What does the council want to stay away from? What topic do you not want to address? My understanding all these years here and other locations is you have the items on the agenda. We all know the purpose behind that. We also know under the Brown Act, it is a requirement, and I think this city looks forward to doing that. That's not an issue I know of. But I am concerned, and the reason I read that very first part is, how would you know that that is or isn't what it states here, which is within the subject matter jurisdiction of the council? I'd like to know what falls into that category and why the change. Thank you.
Sean?
I would suggest you finish public comment and then allow staff to respond.
Appreciate that. Anyone else in the room wishing to speak on an item not on our agenda tonight? Anyone online?
Yes, Mayor. Fran, please go ahead.
Hi, it's nice to see you all tonight. At the last one, I forgot, I really wanted to give a shout out to the Lincoln Theater Company, because that Fiddler on the Roof was the best presentation they've ever done. I wish they had added an extra weekend. I would have gone and seen it again. It was just so good. But the other thing is the parking at the library. You know, I counted 30 spaces that were used by the dumpsters. So the dumpsters are, the cardboard dumpsters are taking up 30 spaces. And I had an idea. People say, well, where put them? Well, you know where you took out the 12 Bridges sales office on the other side of Colonnade, the other side of 12 Bridges? There's already a paved parking lot there, and there's a way to get in and out of there. You could easily put the cardboard dumpsters right there, and it would be close to where they used to be. People would find them easily. And if you don't want to put it there, if you go up Fieldstone, there's Red Rock Drive, and it dead ends, and there's paved street there, but it dead ends because the street doesn't go through. And I see people up there all the time doing remote airplanes, but that would be another good place you could put the dumpsters. And I hope you look at that, because it's really an obstacle at the parking lot at the library. I tried to get out of there yesterday. They have all the programs there, you know, and there was an SUV parked opposite me and next to me. And I had a real hard time getting out of a regular parking space because of the limits there. Something else I wanted to mention was, if I can read it here. I wonder whatever happened to the group of people who wanted the warehouse out at the airport to use for the kids. Because my granddaughter's in a basketball program, and they've been going to a place called Hardware Palace. And we go over there, and it looks just like what that guy's trying to do over here in Lincoln with the warehouse. You know, they have this huge, huge building. They've got 8 basketball courts in there, and they've got stuff going there all the time. And there's no reason, and that's on off of Industrial. And there's no reason why we couldn't have something like that in Lincoln. We've got the warehouse. We've got the people willing to do it. They don't want the city to have to put any money into it. So I was just wondering whatever happened with that. And then the other thing was that I'm seeing more and more things on social media about the railroad misfunctions of the arms coming down. And I know it's been a year since the lady was killed there, at Ferrari Ranch. And I'm just wondering, if anyone's looking into that. So, and then I'd like to give a shout out to the First Christian Communities Church. They had the Lincoln Community Christian School there, which is now Lincoln Christian Academy there for many, many years. And we had a wonderful relationship with them. So thank you for letting us come and speak to you.
You bet. Thank you, Fran.
Mayor Melanie B., please go ahead.
Good evening, council. I'm just hopping on, so if I am repeating any information, I apologize. I wanted to follow up on a couple items from the last meeting that you had. The first being the relocation of the cardboard recycling objects onto the high school property there in 12 Bridges. And I believe it was mentioned there was some space toward the entrance of the school. If you've been out to that recycling center on the library parking lot, it's not often in very good shape. People drop things that aren't cardboard, such as propane tanks. They drop boxes that aren't broken down. There's a lot of issues that are not done properly, conducted properly with that recycling center. And to have that situation at the entrance to brand new high school, I'm wondering if there's maybe an alternate location so that we solve some of the parking issues there at that space, but not have that recycling center right there to the entrance to that high school. Secondly, with regards to Jimenez Park, I heard that some soccer fields are going in there, and that's fantastic. And that baseball fields are coming at a later date. I'm wondering why that decision to put soccer in first happened. And then at what date we might expect some ball fields, because this town is in desperate need of more ball fields for all of our players. And then thirdly, there was a post that I saw with regards to a Sacramento Business Journal article about the property that's being developed across from the city hall there, which will be mixed use, commercial and living space. And I'm curious about the relationship to that building and the downtown parking situation. What parking considerations are being made in that project? And is that project going to add any more spaces to our downtown parking allotment for the housing? What's the requirement for the parking allotment? Is that street parking? Is there a parking facility? What is the parking situation there, and how does that development affect the parking in downtown?
That it, Melanie?
For right now, yes, thank you.
All right, thank you.
No other hands are raised, Mayor.
Close public comment. I'm happy to work my way through them. I think that first one is probably best if you take, Christine.
Thank you. Yes, the change in the verbiage of our agenda was made at my suggestion based on public events that have been taking place in California that I believe has necessitated the change and has been in concurrence with my city attorney colleagues through Cal Cities.
It might be helpful if you are a little bit more specific about that. I mean, I know you can only say so much, but that was very big. I understand what you're saying, but the question needs to be answered.
So there have been a number of incidents at city council meetings where individuals have taken over the Zoom forum and they're calling them Nazi bombs, and they have come online and been using very explicit language, being Holocaust deniers, and just inciting what I would term violence. And so we wanted to ensure that we started putting some protections into place so that it was clear to individuals who are commenting to city council that the subject matter jurisdiction of this council is important.
That's fair. And I think what I would add to that is we're trying to thread a needle here. The city of Sacramento has stopped taking Zoom comments altogether. We all honor the First Amendment greatly. We like this tool and the ability for our community to continue to reach out and be involved. But we also have to have some measure of boundaries in the comments that can be made within our jurisdictional authority. It doesn't make any sense to have somebody come in and talk about events happening in Australia and expect us to be able to respond to that or do anything about that. So not that this is about Australia. I think you get the essence of it, Mr. Chapman.
Actually, you asked for an example. An example would be someone coming up in public comment suggesting that the United States declare war on Canada. That's obviously not having anything to do with a discussion within the community of Lincoln. The idea behind subject matter of our jurisdiction is anything that we can do for the community that's in our power is within our jurisdiction. If it's not within our power, because it's not in our jurisdiction, it's not worthwhile comment. In this setting, there are other environments and settings where that's perfectly reasonable. So that's one example, is calling Lincoln to have a declaration of war on Canada.
And Mayor Pro
I'm
Tem,
not advocating that.
to that point, I know you probably like Canadian whiskey, but to that point, I think it's always important to remind the public that this is a business meeting of the city council, where you are here to conduct business. The public has a right to comment on the items of business that may come before you at some point in the future. It obviously informs your agenda item under council initiated business if you want to then direct staff based on public comment to take up an action item in the future. But it is not a town hall. It's not an appropriate location for just any subject to be discussed that may in fact be disruptive to the conduct of the business of the council.
And I think that's a really good point, Christine. We tried to make that through the years. This is a business meeting of the council. And while we are fairly relaxed and try to involve the community to the degree we can, this is about conducting the business of the city of Lincoln. So I think that's about as far as we're going to go on that one. Relocation of cardboard with respect to Fran's suggested locations. One of them is private property. One is the end of a street. I'm kind of not familiar with that location, but I know you're looking at alternatives.
Yeah, so this might cover both Fran and Melanie's comment. The school district has offered, we're still working through it, but they've preliminarily offered use of the parcel that they have kind of sort of tucked to the, I guess, west of the entrance to the high school as a good location to move the cardboard recycling facility for a few reasons. One is it frees up the parking issue, and Fran is correct. With Catherine Hunt, our library services director, is driven nuts by the parking problems there. And it's not just that; it's use of the facility for sporting events, at the school, which make it tough for certain people to access the library, which we're working out with the school district. Provided that location makes sense, and we're going to have to do some design work to really determine that. I understand the comment that, hey, I'm not sure that having sort of this at the entrance to the high school is, all that attractive, but we would design it in such a way that it's screened and shielded to the greatest extent we can from public view. So there'd be an entrance point and an exit point. And we have some funding that we put into the budget for a recycling center this year. We could site it somewhere else, and we may look at some alternatives, but that includes land acquisition and then determining where's the most appropriate place that everybody can access in that area so that it's closest. So when council eventually sees that project, we will have some alternatives, but the most cost-effective one for the ratepayers is to site at that location and make it screened from public view, much as we can.
Thank you. And I missed one after that. I picked up the warehouse issue at the airport. Parking was. No, that was Melanie. I'm staying on. Frank's list.
This indoor baseball, yeah, this is one time where I'm one step ahead of Fran. I'm working on that with the project proponents right now. We're trading back and forth some detail. There's quite a bit of detail that goes into the kind of improvement they want to make. And so, but it's primarily being led by Lincoln Girls Softball Association, and they've been really great to work with. And so we're well on our way. We'll report back.
Have we run that by the FAA?
Yeah, it's really complex and would take me a while to get through it all. The initial response from the FAA was no. It's too close to the flight zone and we're concerned about that. However, the Airport Commission is looking at flipping flight patterns, which may change some of that analysis. And they were going to potentially do that regardless of this idea. So it may end up all working out in the end. And but what I've kind of committed to that group is, one way or another, we can find a location that works in that area or somewhere else. Because I think, everybody agrees. In fact, I got a text message from the group just before I came in that now that it's raining, they're going to really start putting on the gas to get this done because kids can't play outside. So we're working on it.
Very good. So we move on to Melanie's comments. Jimenez Park, why soccer first? When can we expect the baseball fields and what's holding it up?
The soccer fields was simply always conceived as the next phase of the project logically. When you see the total master plan of Jimenez, and Travis might be able to help on this, but I believe the area that is going to have the lighted soccer field, which is the next major improvement, is the next logical area from already developed parkland. And then to the north of that, sort of tucked in, I guess, almost to the corner, right, Travis?
Yeah,
It's
as
where
you
the
go-
ball fields are
As
conceived.
you go from Groveland, it's tennis courts, then soccer field, then the baseball diamond as you get closer and closer to 65.
Yeah, so we're building, what is that, westbound. And this is what we could afford to do in this phase. So.
And that really is the biggest factor in this, is what can we afford? Where's the funding coming from for those ball fields? The cell phone towers are elements of those baseball fields. There'll be lighting towers
Mhm.
as well. So that'll give you a sense of where those are. But
Well, and also I think it should be noted that it's absolutely true that we hear all the time about the lack of insufficient or not enough fields. And there's some things that we're working on with the school district on joint use that may solve some of that. But we hear those exact same criticisms about soccer as loud, as serious. So it's kind of trying to do what we can with what we've got. And the next couple projects, I think there's even one in this CIP cycle that includes a ball field. So you'll be seeing them.
and I think it's equally important that we're getting a paved parking lot thrown into there as we draw more and more attendance to the park. So good. And then the last was the Taylor Builders project and specific to parking requirements.
So Mr. Johnny on the spot, Mel, already has an answer to that. They would be required under the code to provide about 27 parking spaces, give or take. They're providing 7 on site. It's a really small property, so even 7 was very hard to have them fit. And then they pay a parking in lieu fee for every space that they can accommodate on their own property, which is over $6,000 last time I checked. So that's 122,000 and change that will go into the parking in lieu fund, which goes to fund community parking lots in and around the downtown in certain areas. So that's and that's what you're going to see probably moving forward with any development in the downtown. It's really challenging or cost prohibitive to charge parking requirements that you would do on Greenfield to the downtown. The lots are much smaller. They're more constrained. It's much more difficult to develop there. And so one of the things that Christian and his team are looking at in the downtown plan is rethinking that whole parking model and what makes sense and what doesn't. You want to jump in?
I would just say that if we required that 26 parking spaces, nothing would ever get built downtown. And so that's way out of line. And so, yeah, we're reanalyzing those parking ratios and bringing those forward in our downtown specific plan.
Yeah, and I think that's important. We've had these conversations at economic development and continue to have them. If we want to see, as our downtown continues to grow and thrive, if we want to see infill projects, we've got to accommodate some solutions for parking that make good sense. And we want to bring residential in as well. We're not going to be able to build underground parking garages for these small properties.
And I would just add that there's ample street parking surrounding that site as well. It's right downtown. We encourage walking, alternative transportation. So it's ideal for not having parking as well, given its location.
Got it. Thank you. I think that wraps us up on public comments. So we'll go ahead and move on now to our consent agenda. We've removed item 8B to a future date, and I have had a request from Councilmember Lawrenson to pull item 8F. Are there any other requested items to be pulled? Anyone in the room requests council to pull an item, Mr. Chapman? 8I. There it is on the back. All right. Anyone else?
We do have a hand raised on Zoom. Mr. Garabedian, please go ahead. Please unmute yourself, Mr. Garabedian.
Thank you,
Yes, we can hear you.
Kathy. Thank you, council members. I'm going to turn off this other sound here. There are two items I would like to comment on.
And they are which?
I have questions about, and one is 8C. There's only one of me here, not two.
Okay.
8C on the Municipal Finance Authority Bold Program, and also 8F on the Village One Specific Plan revisions.
All right. 8F has already been pulled, so we'll go ahead and anyone else online, Gwen?
No other hands are raised, Mayor.
So let me just double check. We've had requests for 8C, 8F, 8K, and 8I. Is that correct?
Move approval of the remainder.
Second.
Motion Carlson, second Andriata. Go ahead and roll call, please.
Councilmember Carlskent,
Yes.
Councilmember Andriotta,
Yes.
Councilmember Brown,
Yes.
Councilmember Lauritsen,
Yes.
and Mayor Joyner.
Yes. All right, we'll work our way through these. Item 8C. Mr. Garabedian, did you want a staff report on this, a brief staff report, or did you have questions?
Please unmute yourself, Mr. There you go.
Yes, thank you, Michael Garabedian. Appreciate the opportunity. I have a specific question. If there was a summary of the item, that would be okay. And that is, what happens if municipal CMFA bond funds are used for a project that fails? And I understand that there's an issue there. If it fails, that the municipality may be expected by CMFA to take over the project. But that's the issue I wanted to introduce. Thank you.
All right, thank you. You're looking at each other. Who
Yeah,
wants to?
So I guess it depends on what Mr. Garabedian means by fails. CMFA and other similar versions of it, we call them bold, is now almost a standard financing mechanism we're seeing it on almost every single project now. And so I suppose if by fails, he means, what if the bonds are taken out and the project never sells? or they never build the homes. The way that those bonds are paid off are through a created community facilities district. And so I suppose it would likely go into a bankruptcy proceeding if that was, that the developer would be a part of. The city's exposure, and maybe Nita can speak to this a little bit, is really pretty slim, if at all. I suppose in a situation where like everything just completely stopped for like 10 years, maybe but the bonds are not backed by the city's credit line or funds, in that form. So it's not like we're essentially underwriting the loan, which I think is the concern. Nita, is there anything I missed on that?
No, that's correct, that this program, while the city is a partner in allowing this financing mechanism, it really is a financing tool between the developer and this particular entity, CMFA. So if the developer were to somehow default or to stop building, I guess I would say typically first that in some instances, these bonds aren't sold until the project is well underway, so that there is already significant investment by the developer. There are occasions where the bonds are sold at the very beginning of the project. But even at that, when that occurs, the developer is not reimbursed until there is significant, again, development and movement on the project. So there's housing and sticks in the ground. So should the developer fold after bonds are issued, if the funds haven't been reimbursed to the developer, as is the course with these bonds, then they would be returned to the bondholders at worst case scenario. But like Sean said, it would be a bankruptcy proceeding between the developer and the bondholders. It really doesn't affect the city. There isn't a requirement for the city to step in and complete this project.
I think that addresses Mr. Garabedian's questions. Anyone else in the room wishing to comment on this item? Anyone online, Gwen? Council, before I take a motion?
I'll move. Second.
Motion Brown, second Andriata. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you. Councilmember Brown.
Yes.
Councilmember Andriana.
Yes.
Councilmember Carl Skint.
Yep.
Councilmember Lauritsen.
Yes.
And Mayor Joyner.
Yes. We'll move on to item 8F. Councilmember Lawrenson pulled this, I think, for consistency of his vote. Is that right?
Yeah,
Did you?
few more comments.
Good, go ahead.
The reason I don't like this is we seem to have a problem with the Titan site. It's extremely contaminated. There's a plume of contamination that is spreading. And EIR doesn't really address this. It really talks about traffic, not the contaminant. Oh, it really talks about the traffic situation, not contamination. I would like to see a study that actually explains where this plume has spread. I would also like to see that what mitigations are necessary for this site before we do anything. And I think the EIR needs to be updated.
And Mr. Garabedian, you also requested that this item be pulled. Did you have questions or did you want a brief staff report?
Mr. Garabedian, please unmute yourself.
Thank you. My interest was in item 8F. Is this the same item we just, Mr. Lauritsen just spoke about?
Correct.
I would just appreciate a brief explanation of the revisions. Thank you.
Right.
Yes, Mel Pablo in this. If I can, I'll just take Mr. Garabedian's question first. Is that all right?
Yeah.
So the GDP is a general development plan, which is the zoning code for the Village One plan. As we have this typical muni code, we have zoning code. The GDP acts as the regulations for the GDP for the Village One, how it develops, lotting, number of lots, circulation patterns, and everything. So the revisions basically, I think from what I recall, are just some lotting reductions as far as lot sizes went down a little bit. And there were some setbacks as well, like setbacks to the rear property lines and whatnot. Very minor changes to it, just more just how it functions when at the lot level, those standards are changed. So, but very, very minor text changes at that level of development.
And did you want to respond to Mr. Lawrence's?
Yeah, with regards to the Titan missile, this project has no, as I mentioned before, it has no bearing on the Titan missile issue regarding the plumes. As far as the traffic impact analysis, there was a study that was done for this project. It was found to be insignificant, other than noise as a result of the traffic, but the traffic itself was found to be insignificant. And I could have Adrian Graham as well expand on that response, and as well as provide more some background information regarding the Titan missile site or TCE. And as I mentioned, it has no bearing on, this project has no bearing on that issue.
How do you know?
It's outside of the project area.
The missile base is not within the project
Yeah,
area.
it's
And the
outside
plume is
project.
going in the other direction. And the mitigation for the noise and the road impacts is a rubberized
Yes.
asphalt.
And that's in place with the adoption of the MMRP for the EAR.
Tony, you're chomping at the bit. You want an opportunity to speak on this one?
Thank you for allowing me to speak. Again, as we mentioned last time, the project is to amend the specific plan, portion of the specific plan, which is not including the regional park, which not including the county, which not including Oak Tree Lane, where the TC potential is. So again, this amendment is not part or does not include the area that is in question. So I appreciate the council acting today, keeping it based on our application, which is just that amendment. And if there's any other issues outside of our application, thank you.
All right. Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak on this item?
We do have a hand raised. Melanie, please go ahead.
Good evening again, council. I had some questions with regards to the access that Oak Tree Lane will have onto 193 or McBean Parkway. Will there be lights at both of those access points onto that main road? And what is the city's plan of management of speed between Ferrari Ranch, well, I guess coming from both directions? I drive on that section of 193 McBean almost daily. I see all kinds of traffic and huge trucks. And of course, right now, haulers carrying large equipment. I see concrete trucks, there's logging trucks, there's everything going through there at a high rate of speed. So will two stoplights be included there with the access points, the egress ingress access points from Oak Tree Lane onto that main road? What is the speed plan for safe traffic flow through there? And then I'm also curious about the open space allotment that's included in this project, and whether that open space is all physically located within this space or if it's also located somewhere else.
With regards to the western intersection of Oak Tree Lane and McBean Parkway, there will be a traffic light there. I don't remember, maybe Tony can help out with regards to the other end, the eastern end of that intersection where it loops back onto McBean Park Drive. Maybe Tony can respond to that.
Yeah, ultimately, as the traffic requires, it will be, because 4-lane road will require a signal.
With regards to the open space, there are many acreages of open space that will be part of the plan. Of course, there's a plan shown on the corner of the room over there that shows the location of it. Typically, when the area for open space, they kind of go along with the tentative map being finalized.
That way you have an idea on the planning of the residential areas as well as the open space. So it kind of goes hand in hand as it moves along in phases of the project. But there will be open space according to the plan as designed.
Okay, and then our last question was speed controls.
Yes, so Mel, maybe I can help with that one. So if you take, if you're going westbound past Sierra College Boulevard all the way into the bridge, essentially, there is no stop signs or traffic lights until you get to Ferrari. One of the reasons why that's such a fast roadway is that it's very wide and there is still very little development along that corridor. Getting there. But what you will see is as the full improvements along McBean Park, those signalized intersections, and then development that's likely to occur certainly on the southern side, it is a natural change in how people navigate that roadway from Sierra College, because you're not going to have basically a free runway all the way to Ferrari any longer.
Thank you. I think that covers this. We'll go ahead and accept a motion if there are no questions from council.
Move approval of item 8F.
We did have a hand go up.
All right,
Fran, please go ahead.
right under the wire, Fran.
Yeah, well, I just want to know a timeline on that signal light going in on 193 and Oak Tree Drive. We had another accident there Sunday morning after pancake breakfast last month. I know they're working on it. Any timeline for that signal light going in?
I'm going to kick it over to the city engineer because there's a trigger that exists with a certain number of units being built, but I know that design has been rolling along. Travis, can you offer any update?
Yeah, currently, we're still finalizing the agreements between two developers that might take that project forward. And like Sean said, there is a trigger on a certain number of building permits issued in Village 1. We're still a little ways off that. So at this point, it's really the developer's prerogative on when they'd like to do it. I would say that from a building permit trigger, it most likely, depending on build out, wouldn't be until next year or later.
Okay, so a developer could, of their own volition, go ahead and install that sooner, but the city's controls on it would be that trigger.
Correct. That intersection needs to be finalized before some of the developers to the north of 193 are able to move forward with additional final maps. So there is a trigger that's delaying their ability to build.
All right. Thank you. Anyone else?
No, Mayor, no other
All right,
hands.
I do have them. You got a question?
Sure, I got a question.
Okay.
Is there a way that we can get that number and have a way to get an update on that number once a month or something? I don't know how hard that would be. We just seems like friends asked tons about that, and if we could periodically have a number we can go by.
Tony wants to give you something.
Right now, they're working on Oak Tree Lane, so even though with the weather and all that stuff, we've been working on an ID negotiation to get an easement done. I think we're getting close. If that gets done, so we can finish Oak Tree Lane. Improvement plans are with SP for McBean to finalize. So hopefully, I think that's getting close to being signed. By the time you go through winter, it's forcing us to construct in the springtime. So most likely that intersection will be part of construction in spring because you cannot open up everything during winter. But in progression, that's where we are. Ferrari is paved. Oak Tree Lane in about 2 weeks will be paved, at least first lift. And then hopefully NID will be resolved next week. And then we'll be ready to finish Oak Tree Lane up to McBean. And they're ready to go hopefully next spring with McBean Park.
Got it. Thank you, Tony. Anything else from the council?
Mayor.
Okay. And Dan smacked his lips like he had a question.
No.
All right, Mr. Chapman, quickly. It's usually a sign you want to speak.
Byron Chapman over in the 12 Bridges area. And it's not just this project, there's others that, as I get into this, hopefully you'll understand where I'm going with this. On the open space areas, when we moved here to Lincoln, I was absolutely, completely blown away. I could not believe all the open space areas within and around the city. I'd never seen a place like that. And attending the meetings, I found out as developers come in, they augment those, and oftentimes they try to do it where the development's taking place, and if not, it's moved over to another area. This particular project here with the open space, hopefully it will not be backed up to where you have, or at least considered, where you do not have additional building down the road. And my primary point is I've looked at this for the last 12 years. The first 4 years that we were here off of the 12 Bridges Road up between Sun City and you go down to the Coyote Pond, and then you can cascade all the way, up to where the new houses have come from Verda over and the range where all those houses are there. We have not seen quail, pheasants, turkeys, and the list goes on of any animal. If it can fly, it may be able to get in there. Pheasant, good luck trying to get over the houses. We've noticed that entire area, since if you look at a bird's eye view, you'll find that open space area looks really, really neat. And for a person to walk it, you go, wow, this is pretty big. However, it's not. It doesn't sustain any of the wildlife that was there originally. I literally could go any time of the day, any time of the month, and see all this wildlife going on. And slowly, as the building took place, it got phased out. You would be better off to go up there and walk that area and find a 2-pound block of gold to find any of the animals I've just mentioned. So what I'm saying is you have the open field area. But for, the trees, eventually the environment, there is a receding issue from the insects all the way up. I mean, the tree life, call it what you will, but just from the enjoyment, that sort of thing. And we don't even have that much anymore over by Coyote Pond. So I just want the city and developers to understand that open space sounds really great. And I thought it was terrific, but as soon as it got enclosed, there's no way to, animals can travel back and forth and make it do what it does. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chapman. I think what you're looking for is wildlife corridors and some planning connectivity between these open space parcels. All right, anyone else? I believe I have a motion in a
Yep, I
second.
made a motion.
Motion was Andriana. Who was the second? Dan? One.
Yes, Councilmember Andriotta.
Yes.
Councilmember Carlskin.
Yep.
Councilmember Brown.
Yes.
Councilmember Lauritsen.
No.
And Mayor Joyner.
Yes. We move on to item 8I. I do not recall who requested this one to be pulled, Mr. Chapman. Usual question, do you need a small presentation or just questions?
There we go. Mr. Mayor, Byron Chapman again, council members. I was kind of concerned. I know several people that live up there and around that area. I read all the information in the packet about when they, contacted the city and the police department, and now they're, opting out of that. My question is, okay, that's all very good, and it is gated, literally physically gated. But what happens in that area if the police department is summoned? I understand through that if you approve this, then the police department, they don't go up and do traffic stops. They don't go to any stop signs. I mean, when it talks about noise, aggravation, it gets to the point where it gets vocal, if not physical. How does the police department entertain that kind of a scenario? Thank you.
Mayor, it's a really relatively straightforward answer. The police department will not be doing traffic enforcement, but just like any other community in Lincoln, if they get a 911 call, police and fire will respond.
Thank you, Christine. Anyone else have any questions or comments on this item?
We do have a hand raised. Mr. Garabedian, please go ahead. Please unmute yourself. Thank you.
No, thank you. That was a comment on the last item I was going to add, but not necessary. Appreciate
Okay,
it.
thank you.
All right, thank you. Any questions from council? Comments? Seeing none, I'll accept a motion.
I move approval.
Second.
Motion Andriata, second Brown. Go ahead.
Yes, Councilmember Andriana.
Yes.
Councilmember Brown.
Yes.
Councilmember Carl Skint.
Yep.
Councilmember Lauritsen
Yes.
and Mayor Joyner.
Yes. Finally, we move on to item 8K. Mr. Chapman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Again, council members, city staff. The only thing that threw me off when I was reading through this packet is this particular item, which I think is a good one. Was it part of the budgeting process when you were going through the budget last time? The only word that really threw me off a little bit is number one, it says creating a capital improvement project. So I'm not real clear about, is that something that was budgeted? It's not budgeting? How did it, get onto the list? That sort of thing. So thank you.
Fair question. Sean, you want to take it?
Yeah. Let's see. I think it was December. Is that right, Nita? At the beginning of COVID, all the way through really current, different federal administrations had different aid packages that they sent to local governments, all with different rules. And there was one component that was sent through, I think, community development block grants or housing and community development, which allocated a dollar figure to Lincoln, but has a much more strict and rigorous sort of set of criteria about what you can spend it on and when you can spend it. And so the original concept that we had for the project, for a project for that money was not going to work. And so we went back to the state agency because we were concerned about sending those dollars back to the state if we could put them to some kind of good use. You may recall we called this emergency special meeting in December and asked council to change up the project so that we could spend it on something. And quite literally, one of the only purposes that we could find in the appropriate geographic area and serving a very specific kind of population and a type of project that the state would allow was this one that Travis and Anita kind of came up with a creative idea. And so it operates in our CIP, but it kind of operates outside of it a little bit too, because it's funded almost exclusively with state grant dollars. And the timeline is quite tight on it. So is there anything you want to add to that, Nita?
No, I would just say that, so it wasn't included in the CIP list that was in the adopted budget, which is why we're bringing it forward, which is one of the reasons why we're bringing it forward now to get to create those CIPs for these two projects. And the reason it wasn't included is because we hadn't finalized what was going to be needed in order to accomplish the project. And so it wasn't feasible for us to try to put it in the budget.
We also needed state concurrence
Yeah.
that they were okay with the concept, which we've now received. And
Right. So we didn't, even though we submitted that request, we didn't receive approval in time. And so we don't put items in the budget that aren't approved or aren't certain.
Good, Mr. Chapman. All right. Anyone else wishing to speak on that item?
Yes, Mayor Melanie, please unmute yourself.
Yes, good evening again, council. I'm curious as to what portion of this project and the daily management of this facility and the meal passing out, what portion of it is funded with federal funds? And also I'm glad to see there's really no additional water hookups or rearrangement of the water supply to this building, as it's October and all of our water rates are increasing. But really beyond the funding that you're putting in now, who manages this facility and facilitates what happens out of this building? And where do those funds come from?
yeah, great question. We have it's kind of two-pronged. Primarily, it's run by Seniors First, which is for anybody out there, if you're not familiar with them, they're a fabulous nonprofit that operates regionally in Placer County, and they run I think 3 days a week down there. And they do, it's not simply food giveaway to senior citizens in need, although it is that. It's a social time for them to come and play games. They have resources for people that might need help with, contacting different agencies. It's kind of really it is what it's titled as. It's sort of a senior community center, and gets a lot of use in that area, especially by seniors that don't drive and can easily walk over there. The concept of so the answer to your question is, it may be that Seniors First has federal grant funding. I don't know that. Wouldn't surprise me, but the city does not receive any set aside federal money for the facility at all. And in terms of our budgeting for the facility, it's pretty minimal. I mean, we're really lucky to have Seniors First in there, although recreation department is going to try to pick up some of the days where Seniors First isn't there to add a few extra things for seniors to do, recreational.
Mayor, if I might add, it's also manned by a lot of our community volunteers. Women from the Women's Club and other parts of town come in and they volunteer there every single week.
In fact, the whole impetus to start out with was from nonprofits.
Yeah.
I don't think the city put much, if anything, into
The building. All right, if there are no more questions from the public, none from the council, go ahead and accept a motion.
I'll move.
Second.
Motion Brown, second Andriana.
Yes, thank you. Councilmember Brown.
Yes.
Councilmember Andriana.
Yes.
Councilmember Carl Skint.
Yep.
Councilmember Lauritsen
Yes.
and Mayor Joyner.
Yes. It completes our consent agenda. We move on to public hearings. Item 9A, conduct a public hearing and adopt the extension of urgency ordinance 1067B of the City Council of the City of Lincoln, adding chapter 9.50 to title 9 of the Lincoln Municipal Code, prohibiting syringe exchange programs from operating in the city of Lincoln, and finding and determining the urgency ordinance is not subject to the California Environmental Quality Act pursuant to CEQA guidelines. Christine?
Thank you, Mayor and council members. As previously discussed, I will try to be brief here. This is a renewal of the urgency ordinance. So tonight, as item 8E, you adopted the second read of our permanent ordinance banning these needle exchange programs from operating within the city of Lincoln. This adoption extension of the urgency ordinance is needed because by the time our regular ordinance goes into effect, there will be a gap of about a week between our urgency ordinance and the effective date of our ordinance that was adopted this evening. So just as an update, we have been advised by the state of California that the organization that submitted the paperwork that was applying to provide these needle exchange services in South Placer County has subsequently withdrawn their application. I think largely in response to some public outcries by a number of our cities and towns. That is not to say, however, that they will not come back with a revised application or that some other nonprofit organization might try to fill that niche need as well. So to Mayor Pro Tem Carl Skint's point, to reiterate, this does not stop any individual who needs to do a needle exchange from going into any pharmacy, CVS, Walgreens, any licensed pharmacist can exchange a dirty needle for a clean one. That is provided under state law.
Thank you, Christine. Any questions or comments from council? If not, I'll go ahead and open the public hearing. Anyone wishing to testify on this matter, if you could please come to the podium. Seeing none in chambers, anyone online?
No hands are raised, Mayor.
All right, I will close the public hearing. Bring it back on here for a motion.
I second.
Motion, Andriata, second, Lawrenson. Go ahead.
Yes, Councilmember Andriana.
Yes.
Councilmember Lauritsen.
Yes.
Councilmember Brown.
Yes.
Councilmember Carl Skint.
Yep.
And Mayor Joyner.
Yes. Completes our public hearings. We move on to general business. Item 10A, workshop. Update from staff on Lakeview Farms volumetric storage facility and discussion of options for the sale of storage capacity to developers outside of Lincoln.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm going to ask City Engineer Travis Williams to, just for everybody's benefit, because Lakeview Farms is a really, really important project for Lincoln that we don't talk about a lot. It's been on your CIP sheets for a number of years as we've built up enough revenue to actually build it. And we don't need to go into it, but has a very long history of why we're even doing it in the first place. But I think it's important to kind of understand what the nature of the project is so that you can understand why we are receiving so much interest from outside entities. And I mean, projects that are not within our boundaries to purchase additional phases and capacity in the project. And we've entertained a few of those prior to me getting here, and then one small deal since I started. And then we've received some significant interest from other parties, and it made us sort of step back for a moment and have a thought about whether or not the council should probably give us some just rough policy direction at the moment, so we can know that you're interested in entertaining these proposals, or for now, we are fully funded for all of phase one, which would build, the beginnings of the project. And so we don't really need to sell any more capacity at this point. But Travis, maybe you can just explain a little bit more about that.
Yeah, for a quick introduction, Lakeview Farms, it's a 320-acre parcel that the city started off with a stormwater maintenance agreement and later actually purchased the property, I think back in 2006. That property has a couple different uses and functions. The first one is that we were able to use some Sparta funds when we originally purchased it because it was going to be a borrow site for the Highway 65 bypass. So a lot of the extra embankment came from this city site, helping us with the original funding or purchase of the land. What that also did was created a basin out there. The basin, out of the 320 acres, it can be expanded up to, I think, 250 acres is what we anticipate it going to. The rest of the acreage is set aside. It's wetland restoration, habitat, stuff like that. But the main basin, as we dig it out, what it's going to do is provide a overflow. We've got Raccoon Creek just to the south of it. And as there's more and more storm surge coming from the city of Lincoln and surrounding areas because of development, Raccoon Creek, as the elevation or water level goes up, it will be able to overflow into these basins, thereby minimizing the downstream flooding. And then as Raccoon Creek diminishes, when those volumes diminish, it can either be pumped or gravity flow back into the creek. And really what it does is there was an agreement that we had in 1998 is when it was finalized as a result of Lincoln developing, that said we had to be able to mitigate for a 8-day, 100-year event. And this helps us get in compliance with that settlement agreement. Like Sean said, we've now got the funding. We purchased the land, which was officially phase one. Phase two, or what we renamed as phase one, is going to be creating 1,050 acre feet worth of capacity. So that was approved on the current year's budget. It's mostly designed. We're just dealing with a couple last Army Corps permits and stuff. Like I say, there's a lot of wildlife habitat out there. So just dealing with that and getting the approvals. But that's going to create 1,050 acre feet of capacity. To put in perspective, the pond that we have behind the treatment plant is 350 acre feet. So this would be 3 times more than what we'd like to decommission at the treatment plant or allow for reclaimed water. Future phases can take that up to 2,800 acre feet, which is what we anticipate as our ultimate requirement with the 2050 general plan or sphere of influence build out. Anything over that would be really at council's discretion. If we want to sell more, it gets really expensive. The first 2,800 acre feet, it's a lot of gravity. It's sort of more affordable. Anything beyond that gets more expensive. It's digging deeper holes. It's adding more pumps, reconfiguring. So as we do sell outside, we are using this increased unit cost based on City of Lincoln needs 2,800. It's, I say affordable, but it's in the $30 million affordable range. That last capacity where we believe we could take it from 2,800 acre feet up to 4,000 acre feet is really, really expensive. And that's what we collect when we sell to outside. Sean, I don't know.
So without naming projects specifically, the philosophical question is, we now have enough funding, as Travis mentioned, to build at least what we need for now and really the foreseeable future here. So Bickford and our other partner are not only contributing towards the actual capital improvement, but also they're forming CFDs for them to help pay for the maintenance too. So when that decision was made by council years ago, it makes sense because we had to build something anyway, and now they're going to help us maintain some of it over time. Beyond that, there's not much need for additional funding at this moment based on like what our needs are in terms of storm drainage. And so it is kind of an interesting policy discussion of whether or not the council is interested in sort of quote unquote being open for business and allowing outside projects or developers to try to buy into that system that we have, essentially funded, designed, and at some point will be maintaining. I could make a bunch of arguments both ways, but we didn't. When someone contacts us regarding a significant contribution to that project, we both started to feel a little bit nervous and felt like this is a big enough dollar figure decision that the council needs to give us a little direction on whether we entertain those or not. As I mentioned, it's not necessary for us to build the project at this time. And so you really have three options. You could say, we want to see every proposal that comes and we will package those and bring them to you. You could say, we're not interested right now. We'll revisit it at some point in the future. Or you could say, we're not interested at all. And, we developed this project, we have it funded appropriately, and we don't need any more partners in the project at this time. They'll have to figure out a way to deal with their own stormwater issues on their own properties. So we're hoping to get a little bit of at least sort of head nodding direction so that we know what to do. And then we'll probably package together some kind of simple resolution for a future consent agenda so that it's in the record for future staff.
Okay. Anybody want to start us off?
Well, I could. That 1,000 acres satisfies the requirement for Coon Creek. Really has nothing to do with runoff in the city. We have a storm management system for that. Unless we're going to start pumping stormwater up this.
Right.
So can we turn this into a profitable, revenue generating operation that's really beneficial to the city? Or do we just stop at the 1,000 until we start looking at village 2, 4, and 3?
Yeah.
And then extend it another 250.
There are business opportunities that if council said, go find something creative to minimize our capital outlay and maintenance to the absolute greatest extent possible, I suspect we could negotiate that. It's a little different than what we're used to because, we're anything that we share with other agencies, we try to make it proportional to their impact, but this is very different, right? It's like these projects, absent this, have to come up with some other solution, which is likely much more expensive. And the other thing that Travis didn't mention, but just so everybody understands, when I first saw the project, I was trying to think, well, why are we pumping stormwater way up 65? We're not. It's a total volume issue. So if they're able to divert and retain, is it detain or retain? Retain?
This is a detain. We let it back.
So if we're able to detain that means the less flow that comes in from Lincoln affects downstream in Sutter County, right? So that's sort of the concept behind it. And everybody needs to find a way to solve that problem, whether they be in a county project or a city project. So I think we probably could come up with a pretty interesting set of much more expensive options for people that would like in. And if the direction from council is figure out a way to do it responsibly where we minimize our costs as much as humanly possible to Lincoln. And other facilities may decide that they might want to rent some capacity. There's, I think there's options. We just wanted to have an idea about how much time do you want us to really spend on this concept if you're interested in it at all. If not, then that's fine. We could just say no and go back to work. Go ahead, Travis.
Just for a little bit more information, Dan, the 2,800 there is a commitment to get to that level, and that's being triggered even right now. So the 1,050 was the 1988 general plan needs. Now that we're getting into Village 1 and some of these other annexed areas, that's getting from the 1050 up to the 2,800. But we're always leapfrogging with funding. So as part of our PFE, we collect drainage impact fees, and a very large 80 to 90% of that is going to Lakeview Farms. So as we collect enough fees, we'll continue with the future phases. But that, I don't believe we're in a position where we could stop at the 1,080, stop collecting fees, stop developing. We need to go to that ultimate build out, that ultimate commitment of the 2,800.
I still don't understand how it works. We are not going to be pumping our stormwater up there. So that stormwater doesn't come from our development.
Not
Right.
currently. Raccoon Creek is the northern limit of our sphere of influence. So as we get Village 2s and 5s and stuff, we'll start playing with that watershed more.
Right, because there's nothing in the watershed except for Coon Creek, and that's natural, right? That's one thing. And what you're really asking is, should we get in the mitigation business? Because that's what we'll be doing, is providing mitigation for other developments, non-Lincoln developments. And if we treat it as mitigation, there are certainly ways that are beneficial to the city that flow and the foundation for perpetual maintenance, is part of the initial buy-in, just like PCCP, only you're mitigating water flow rather than wetlands. I was interested to find out that there's additional acreage that we don't need that is potential mitigation. I mean, environmental mitigation.
Correct. There's already been some areas that were set aside as a restored wetland habitat. So we can't.
A lot of this also used to be a country reserve back in the day. Anyone else?
My only thing is that I'm not interested in helping outside developments that are boxing us in and contributing to our leakage or tax revenue and whatever else. So not that I'm opposed to, us making money, but I'm not interested in helping outside developments. That's not something that I would think we should really get into.
And is that just because of how much they box this in, and how much they're going to be taking tax revenues from us?
Exactly, exactly, because there's been really no consideration for how it affects us on all sides, right? And they just are building right up to our borders and we already struggle with tax leakage. And so it's just gonna get worse. And so not that, we're not friendly with those developments or whatever, but we need to make sure that we're okay and that we're whole and that we take steps to help ourselves. I'm not interested in helping outside developments that do not benefit Lincoln at all and that box us in and causes our problems to be even greater. So, and that's not a vindictive thing. It's just.
Just sounded.
All right, Councilman Carlson.
Bill, I'm gonna go to you. Nothing.
I get, I understand exactly what you said.
Yeah.
But they're gonna mitigate regardless, or they don't develop. And if they do mitigate someplace else, then we're in worse shape
Mhm.
if we want to get into that business. It's a way of making something at least off of those irritating developments.
Well, that's something to think about.
I'm coming at it from a different place than you, I think, Dan, and much more in alignment with where Holly is. Let me ask this question first. What fund would these dollars go into, and how could these funds, should we collect them, be used?
Well, depends on the fund. So the Bickford deal, for example, they just sent the second of 3 checks in excess of $500,000. Those dollars go into, I think they might, I don't need to, do we drop those into storm PFE or are they in a separate set aside? I think they're in the drainage PFE is where they're assigned because that's how the project's being built.
I think that's correct.
When they create their community facilities district for maintenance, that will be dropped into yet another set aside account that's specific to the maintenance of Lakeview Farms, which the first phase, as Travis explained, is really pretty minimal. But as it grows, you get more pumps, you got to get out there and fix them periodically and replace them. So I guess I'd have to work with Christine a little bit to know whether if we were to license additional capacity, if there's a public benefit assessment that we could charge, since it's not inside city limits and a city run utility. We're gonna have to talk through that, but I think there probably is a way for us to levy something more like essentially an inflated buy-in charge since you're not in city limits. Right.
So let me get to an absolute bottom line on this. This could not go in the general fund.
Not the capital or maintenance dollars, but if we look at it and Christine's determination is that there's a legal mechanism for us to assess above and beyond that, then I think, yes, those probably are general fund dollars. I mean, there are business, there are cities that have, special facilities that only they have that charge up and above what it actually costs to provide the service in order to subsidize other things they want to do. So I'm sure I'm almost positive there's a path forward. We just have to look into it more.
Bill, you were shaking your head a little bit when Dan was making his comments. I just was interested what you were thinking.
I'm just a little bit concerned the fact that, we're mitigating an area outside of our city. We should get something for it.
My concern, right there with you. My concern is this: if we all agree that development should be happening in the incorporated areas and not the unincorporated areas, aren't we simply talking about whether we're going to facilitate that which we say should not be happening in the first place. And in so doing, harming ourselves and our future growth, certainly delaying it as these other areas jump in line. And I have a hard time. I understand your logic, but I have a hard time saying, hey, this is going to happen anyway. And this damage is going to be done to me anyway. At least this way I'll get a cut of the funds for this. I would on this one rather stand on principle. Which doesn't mean, here's where I've got a nuance. If we've got somebody who wants mitigation that is at a distance that does not harm us, I can have that conversation. But it's these surrounding specific plans that have the real probability of, at the very least, delaying our own growth that concern me the most.
Well, so I fully understand and agree with all of that. The city has done the Bickford deal. We're into that one. There's the other one that I mentioned, which is a small RV storage place, which is pretty minor and it kind of makes sense. So we're working on that. What we could do, it's not like it's like an overwhelming amount of requests we're receiving every day that's taking a bunch of our time. I get that what we're asking you to do is try to figure out what the best path forward is without knowing what the offer might be, who it's from, what it serves, any of those important details. So if you wanted, we could receive those requests and package them together and the council can rule on them individually. I mean, I think that most likely you maybe get, I don't know, what do you think, 2 or 3 more at the most? And so that would give you the ability to really look at the issue and determine if this makes sense or not long-term, or, we could shut it down and not have that discussion.
I don't know that that's strong, solid policymaking.
Yeah. Yeah, your policy is everything's a one-off.
Yeah. So, I don't know that I've got any more to add. We've had this conversation privately. I am very concerned about facilitating the very thing that will do us harm. And if there's a way to make sure that does not happen, then I'm more open to a conversation.
I would agree with that.
Okay.
Can you nod?
No, I'm
Okay.
fine with that.
If circumstances change or there's just something
Which-
that completely is
yeah.
different than what we discussed this evening, then you'll see it in front of you anyway.
Yeah. But what we're saying, and I'm fine with it, is that we don't do any mitigation for anybody except ourselves. That's what we're saying, and that's fine. You can't, I don't think you say policy-wise, if they're within 30 miles of Lincoln, we won't mitigate. Or if they're in an unincorporated part of a county or our county, we won't mitigate because that, they're not affecting you.
So that
So
way-
I don't know how you craft the policy.
I think it's doable, but that does lead me to explore another area. Let's assume, Travis, you probably got the map in your head, that watershed as it goes up the hills. Goes up where? What is it? Is it Auburn area?
Oh, you're talking beyond,
As
I've
you
only
go up the
studied it.
foothills, where-
Yeah, I've only studied it past city boundaries to the east, not all the way.
So here's what I'm getting at. If something were to, if some developer, for me, some developer had a specific plan they were moving forward with, and I'll just call it outside of Auburn, I don't know that that harms us. It doesn't directly impact what we're trying to do here. On the other hand, a project, let's see, totally made up, 2 miles to our north, that is in the unincorporated county would most definitely harm us. And so that's where the nuance lies, is in that harm. I don't know that I totally need to get into the never, ever realm. How we explore that, how we determine whether there's harm caused to our community and our efforts.
Yeah,
by the project itself.
I think I've got enough to know how you feel. And
Now we're
if
just making it muddy.
something really significant changes or there's some sort of, and it's, at least in staff's opinion, something like, look, we know what you said, but you need to hear this proposal, then that's why we're all here. So, okay.
We're open. All right, good. That largely completes our agenda for tonight. We move on to
Excuse
city
me,
managers
Mayor,
reports.
we do have a
Uh-oh.
couple hands raised on
Oh.
Zoom.
Okay, unusual for a workshop, but we'll go ahead and take them.
Mr. Garabedian, please go ahead.
Yeah, Mike Garabedian, thank you for this chance to observe. You are being asked to make an advisory without any of the minimal necessary information. I'm not going to say it's a seat of the pants, but even the report itself says this is based on initial studies. And I would be embarrassed if I was the city manager. I hate to be personal. It's not really personal. Have brought this for you for advice when anybody in the city who's lived there knows that the city does not manage its stormwater flows now. And the pièce de résistance is the city has no map of its stormwater system. Now, you may have people who know that system backwards and forwards who were here earlier tonight speaking to you, but that doesn't mean that you have the documentation to begin to make a plan to manage your stormwaters, much less to be making a decision based partly on a lawsuit from a surrounding county. So you really need to have a documentation. You need to have the engineering study that shows what's going on. And you've already sent 3 million out of the city for tree mitigation fees. In a way, this is another sort of issue to help people, could help people outside of the city. I really don't want to speak that. I just want to focus on the engineering issues here, the knowledge you all may have personally that you're applying here, but you don't have the engineering data and report. The staff who reported to hasn't looked beyond a certain area up in one direction from the city. And things are changing rapidly. The climate is changing, the weather is changing. The decisions you're trying to make about this, in my opinion, do not have even the beginning to make an advisory before you. And I can go into more detail, but it's a bit shocking, really, to be asked to even give direction on this without the data, without the engineering, without the climate, without the changes, without the flooding in the city already. I lived along one of the canals that I saw filled overflowing sometimes. It goes under Joyner Parkway through 2 6-foot diameter pipes, and on the other side it doesn't. There's not a receiving area for that. Markham Ravine one early spring was actually dry, remarkably. So there's some real questions about how this stormwater system is being managed, and I urge you to be looking for more data before you even do an advisory. And I appreciate this chance to pop up on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Garabedian. I think you're kind of misreading what's taking place here tonight. The city manager and the council don't have the ability, except for in an agendized meeting, to sit down and have these conversations. And staff is really, I believe, just trying to take the temperature of the council and see generally what their thinking is with respect to Lakeview Farms specifically, not the entire system. And so this is just a very, very early conversation to get a gauge of where we might or might not be heading. And there will be many future conversations with much more detail. We have somebody else.
Yes, Mayor. Melanie, please unmute yourself.
Yes, good evening again, council. I think it's interesting that you guys are considering the topic of conversation where wastewater storage might actually bring some income potential into our town, and cutting off our hand to spite their foot or whatever. I think there's several revenue opportunities that our city could pursue, and this seems like one that might be useful to us, even if we don't like or prefer other municipalities and how they've quote boxed us in, which I think speaks to the Lincoln's general plan and the housing village plans that are built right up next to our border. If we don't want people butting right up next to our city, then let's annex some land on the other side so that doesn't happen over there. But if we have an opportunity to make some money off of a system that's required, why would we not pursue that? Even if we like or don't like whatever municipality is around us. I think any income into Lincoln's budget is a good thing. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Melanie. It has nothing to do with liking or disliking municipalities around us. What we're actually talking about for the most part is not the municipalities at all. It's development in the unincorporated county. But you make some good points in that there are two sides to this conversation, certainly, moving forward. Without going into great detail here, there are projects that threaten to build, 9 million square feet of retail and commercial directly on our southern border that would benefit greatly from being able to tap into a resource that we have, and would advance their project. And in so doing, I believe, step in line ahead of Lincoln being able to develop its own commercial and retail, which would create that sales tax revenue generation and retention. So that's where my concerns lie. And I think that's what my fellow council members largely share.
Mayor, I'd also just like to clarify, based on the last comment, that what we're talking about is stormwater retention, not wastewater.
Right. And I think generally, those funds have to go to a specific use and be retained largely. There, it sounds like there might be some creative add-ons that could be done. And I'm open to that conversation. Anyone else, Gwen? Well, then we'll go ahead and close the workshop. Go on to city manager reports.
Thank you, Mayor. Only two quick reports. Just a continuing plug for our senior health fair Thursday at 10 o'clock at the pavilion, 10 to 2, I think, 10 to 3. And it's really taken shape. Over 50 vendors, everything you can imagine. Primarily focused, of course, on senior services. We have a really good slate of great speakers. I believe we have Dr. Ellis, our very own Chief Alves, someone from District Attorney's Office. I'm forgetting one. There's another one too. And they're going to be giving kind of little talks every hour or so, I think. And then there's food, and I believe there's some of the vendors are going to have raffle prizes, and it's free. And if go to our website or contact the event organizers, we have transportation options. If you have trouble getting transportation, we've got most of that sorted. And so looking forward to, we're actually starting to get a little bit worried that we're not going to have the turnout, given we're going to have more vendors than we have actual people attending. So really hope people come down and support it, because it's been a real pleasure to work with Harriet and Chris Wyatt on this project. And then the only other thing I want to mention, because Paul brought it up earlier, we had our first of quarterly creek cleanouts that occurred today, and this is a contracted service that we are doing. Christine and Public Works and the police department put together basically a quarterly sweep, essentially, of this area that addresses camps that have gotten completely out of control, and then large equipment that, or pieces of trash that are down there. And so there was, if you see people down there, that's what it is. And we're hoping we'll get some report back to you on how productive it was. But based on the pictures Matt sent earlier today, it looks like they're picking up a lot of debris.
Okay. We move on to council initiated business. Any council initiated business tonight? Seeing none.
I,
Uh-oh. Seeing one.
I would like to see if I have consensus. There was some discussion about this Zoom bombing, it's being called. There are cities that have jerked their knee, eliminated Zoom. What is happening is deplorable. It's totally destroying discourse in communities. The biggest problem is anonymous speakers. And it's kind of like social media. You can hide, make wild statements, comments, hate speech, and get away with it because you're hidden. I'd like to either have a workshop or just come up with an ordinance. In preparation for having an emergency ordinance if this does happen to us. Okay. I don't necessarily, if it's not broken, don't change it. You know, it's always been a good thing.
Soundtrack does not go along
Right.
with the conversation.
It was telling me to take my medication. And that was supposed to be at 5 o'clock and it's called a martini, but anyway. I don't want us to be put in a position where we have to make an instantaneous decision. I'd like to have us been able to talk it out. I think there are, first of all, Zoom doesn't have anything to do with it as a cause or an effect. You can use Zoom as a platform and not allow any comments at all, just as another platform with more accessibility than the other two ways that we do it. Or there are alternatives. You can say, because there are people that contribute valid comments and valid to the discourse validly that cannot physically come to meetings sometimes. In fact, one of our frequent commentators, which is a good word, has a physical problem, and she has to access it for comments via. So there's, a potential of getting pre-approval, a requirement of having your video on as a commenter, which takes away the anonymous part of it. That's something to be talked about. I think that there's, rather than doing something like some of the city councils have done, which is an immediate knee-jerk reaction to one or two bad meetings being defined as people doing outrageous things anonymously. So I'd like to see that either run with an ordinance that we all agree with, but don't necessarily vote on. Okay, you ever put in place or write the ordinance so it goes into effect if this happens, something like that. But I do think we don't want to do.
I understand, but I don't want, we've gotten almost into the workshop tonight.
Well,
So
right.
I don't want to keep going down that path.
Yeah.
My general sense is we're all open to that conversation.
It would be great to have a discussion about it.
Maybe just have guidance for the chair and the mayor what's acceptable and what's not. Obviously anti-Semitism is not, Nazi salutes are not. If that person starts, if they started,
See, that's where we get really dangerous with the First Amendment. And it's, so I think a workshop is the best place for
Right.
that and not tagged on to a council meeting like this.
Right.
I think it's a standalone
Specific.
workshop. And I'm more than open to that conversation. I think together, we're probably going to come up with better solutions than the knee-jerk reactions in some of our surrounding communities. I'm going to be really cautious about infringing upon our First Amendment limitations. And so how do we continue
No,
the conversation?
I agree with that. But you can there is no freedom to be anonymous. Okay, if you take that away, I think, anyway, you're right. We're getting into.
The workshop. All right, I think you've got consensus from the council on that one. Any other council initiated business? If not, we'll move on to council committee reports. Start on my left.
Yeah, I just have the one. So the last Pioneer meeting, the board did vote to move forward with expansion into unincorporated Nevada County, but it needs the approval from all of the partner agencies. And so have they reached out already to get it on the next agenda? So I know they sent us a communication, and so they need to get it on our agenda. They wanted to do it in October, so we need to make sure we connect with them for next time, I guess. So.
Then you, Sean, will be out.
Yes,
for
and so that was
meeting.
my information item, that I will not be here on the 24th. I'll be in Washington DC with Placer Business Alliance program, but I mean, we could,
So is there a lot to that? Is that one that we can throw on the
It's very
agenda?
easy.
for-
it's pretty easy, I
Yep.
think, yeah.
We've actually done it before, so the staff report, we can largely recycle. We just need the
And I-
specific
Well,
information.
and I think they sent documentation that I can forward on to you guys. Yeah.
They just have pulled it back to let the
Yeah.
county board of supervisors, the Nevada County, vote on it to accept it.
Yeah,
Because if they don't, there's no reason for us to do it.
right.
Okay, Ben. Ben?
Okay, I've got a couple of them, since I haven't done them in a while. The piece of the Placer Conservation Authority meeting of August 28th. Mostly housekeeping. We signed a yearly contract with Placer County Auditor Controller. Resources Law Group provides our lawyer services. Really interesting thing, we hire via contract a member of the California Department of Fish and Wildlife Services to help us put together our permits to make sure they get through California Fish and Wildlife Services. So
And if his actions fail to make sure it gets through,
yeah,
does he get paid?
no, it does. And we also approved the services agreement with Lincoln as far as the oak tree mitigation stuff. The other one was the WATMA meeting on the 14th. And things of interest there were the WATMA, we have a public-private relationship with the State University, Cal State, and a group called the Growth Factory, which is really Carlson entrepreneurial. And we sponsor a contest for people coming up with ideas and picking a winner for environmental conversion and recycling and so on. Did it last year and we just signed the one for this year. we settled a contract, a disagreement or paid a fine to the Air Quality Control District for some gas problems. And we're in the process of restructuring the management of WAPMA. We're going to currently senior management, meaning the general manager, is a county employee, and it's being our general manager is a part-time job. Well, the board over a series of meetings decided that we have so many things on our plate and the projects are so big now that we need a full-time manager. So we're restructuring the management so that we have a manager that reports just to the board of directors. WAPMA is not a county employee, and there'll be a couple of other employees like that. So we're in the middle of coming up with an MOU of how it's going to work with the county, because the majority of our employees will continue to be county employees simply because they've been there 15 years, and it wouldn't be fair to take away their county benefits. But this brought up a discussion on whether we should change the voting to a proportional voting, depending on how many tons of solid waste, how many tons of landfill that you provide. We had discussion on that, back to the drawing board. That will continue to have, I think, very many discussions, because that could have a significant bearing on the board in the future.
Talking about the makeup of the board itself, or simply weighted voting based on?
Both. I mean, that's one option. Change board membership, depending on, instead of having 2 county people, maybe have 2 Roseville people, or doing it proportionately. The one experience that a JPA has had where they did proportional in Placer County worked until the first time there was a disagreement. And then they went to straight 1 vote per entity, which is I guess that's it. The other one was Pioneer. Expand a little bit. Pioneer, before they expand, they get interest from somebody that wants to expand into Pioneer and join the JPA. Well, they do an assessment of the benefit to Pioneer, and Nevada County, with the assessment they did, is not really a benefit currently to Pioneer. So Pioneer said they will take them on, but they've got a series of conditions, which says they have to have a higher rate and so on. So if the Board of Supervisors doesn't agree with that, then they'll come back at a later time. But you can't imagine how out of control the cost of energy is. It's phenomenal. Which, 2 years ago, the assessment would have been good, but now the cost of energy is so. Anyway, that ends it. And I probably do committee reports again in another 4 months.
Bill, anything from the select group?
Yeah. can step forward.
That's it.
That's it.
All right. I've attended PCTPA, Sparta, and the SACOG Transportation Committee since our last meeting. PCTPA and SACOG fairly routine, nothing impacting Lincoln directly. Sparta, on the other hand, is wrapping up its reassessment of Tier 1 fees. And Lincoln's fees are going up significantly. We will be, I believe, the highest fee rate in our South Placer region. Rockland is a close second, but they've added in at their request their new interchange. And absent that, they would be about $1,000 per unit less than us. It's an alarming increase, so much so that I asked for a meeting with Sparta staff and our staff. We had that meeting. It was not an easy one to have. The general consensus that I think we have to accept is that some bad decisions were made in the past. That reduce the fee impacts to development south of us and other areas from us. And the new Sparta director was spot on when he said, look, I can't fix that. I have nothing to do with that. You brought me in to take a look at the organization, the goals of the organization, and find a way to accomplish those things. I'm doing that, and unfortunately, these are the numbers. And so all we can do is look forward. Set the numbers where they need to be. And he was honest enough to say, and oh, by the way, if a revenue measure does not pass for Highway 65, the 65 interchange and Placer Parkway, then these Sparta Tier 1 fees will have to go up even more to try to cover the cost of that. It's a hard conversation to have. I think where I wound up in the end was this, and Sean, I'll tap you if you have any other thoughts on this. Ultimately, these fees fall on the home buyer, but in the beginning, they fall on the developers, and the developers aren't concerned right now. So Placer 1 has shown no concern. Lewis has shown no concern, and so it does not have a direct impact on the city of Lincoln. And so how hard do we really want to fight to try to reduce those fees, given the fact that there is not a direct impact for us? The final decision, the final vote will be on the 18th of this month, and at least where I am right now is to begrudgingly recognize that this is the path forward. And with some trepidation, vote in favor of it.
I don't really think I have much to add, except that it's kind of just one of those situations where the cost is the cost. And, Mayor and I have had a number of conversations, and I think the frustration that I would have as a representative of Lincoln is that I'm not sure the opportunities were captured going back a really long time to collect some additional revenue from some of our other jurisdictions in South Placer to address the 8065 issue. But that's just the way, the same could be said of homes that built in the 40s in Lincoln. They didn't contribute in the same fee structure to some of the infrastructure that they are now served by. And so what's tough about it, though, is that Lincoln sort of sits at the precipice of this next, phase of our growth. And we just wanted to feel really comfortable that it wasn't disproportionately burdened by Lincoln. But at the end of the day, the aims are good. They're trying to address this problem that's going to only get much, much, much worse in the short term. And so it just kind of feels like there's not a lot of choice here from my perspective.
Yeah, I'm right there too. I think where I continue to have some questions, although I think they were probably addressed in our meeting, is I kind of don't feel like what I'm calling attractive nuisances like the Galleria, like there's 1 million square feet of additional retail and residential going to be added very near the fountains coming up. That's drawing folks in from outside of our area, having big impacts on our roadways. And yet Roseville doesn't seem to be, in my mind, and I'm picking on Roseville because that's where these projects are happening, doesn't seem to be paying a fee commensurate to that. Now, what I heard was an example that I also don't like. Let's say a vehicle trip to the Galleria starts in Marysville. That trip will be attributed to Lincoln on the way down and attributed to Roseville on the way up. Well, Lincoln didn't have anything to do with that. They're just passing through, but we're getting hit with some costs in that. And so there's still some areas that I need clarity on. But generally, I don't know that we're going to influence this to any great degree, but I do think we need to be on record about what our concerns are.
Absolutely. Yeah, I don't think it's right for us to be paying for picking up slack for surrounding cities when, like you just said, they're traveling through and we're getting the brunt of that. So thank you for asking the questions. And
It's an important vote. This is probably the most important vote at Sparta in my 15 years on the council. And this has impacts, they'll say 8 years into the future, but I would say 30 years into the future easily. The other element of that was there was a request to defer some of those fees, potentially 30 years with a renewal of an additional 30 years. The board did not agree with that, and the BIA no longer pushed for that. So fee deferral is out. There was also a request. The staff's proposal was to create 3 tiers of fees. There was a request from BIA to increase that to 4. Sparta staff felt that that was going to be cumbersome. The board overruled that and approved 4 tiers. I think initially BIA was asking for 6 to 8 tiers. So both sides got a little give in this, but ultimately, if I understand it correctly, in the end, this falls on each jurisdiction to determine, and that will be a software issue. It won't be a lot of physical time involved in that. So my worry about that, about staff burden, was relieved by that. That's all I have for tonight. We move on to information items. Anyone have an information item? Bill?
Yeah, I want to second what Fran Nevis said about the fiddler on the roof. Because I was an usher, I got to attend most of the performances, and yes, the songs are going, going around my head. It was very professionally done. It got really good reviews, and I think it's really an asset, and that it's really an asset to the city, Lincoln Theater Company.
Yeah, they are, no question. Anyone else have an information item tonight? Staff, okay. With that, we stand adjourned. Thank you all.
thank you, staff.